Good morning. Today is December 3rd, 2025. It is about 11:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For the record, this is the living Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah. And today started off doing a little bit of kind of housekeeping on the YouTube channel. There was over 200 videos, and a lot of which served a purpose for a time. But as we continue to march forward into the restored earth, into a new paradigm, a new era, where the old world dies and all the sin dies with it, and all the people that are not going to engage in a positive, righteous manner are going to be left behind in the old garment, and the old garment will be thrown onto the fire pile. So I want to start off saying that in no way do I, as the flesh of the living Elohim, there is no reality in which I forsake my own spirit. Because the reason that I go by the name that I go by, which is Yahweh, is it is the Tetragrammaton. Right? My last name is Graham, but being the receiver of my Father's Spirit does not make me two people. It simply means that I was created distinctly to be Elohim on earth. And I, as myself, do fear the 90% Yahweh. Meaning, you cannot try to use carnal thinking when you're thinking about me. If you do, you will essentially continuously ram your head against a wall. It's never going to click. But if you understand that the Almighty Creator, Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, He who makes exist, He who separated the light from the dark, that was the first person. Well, in creation sense, until that mind needed a vessel or a lesser ordinance, ruler, divine, which is how I interpret the Lord, has nothing to do with Baal. It is simply a sub-god, borrowing titles, which is very common in the ancient times, just as common as it is today. But because I am that living Elohim, I am just now manifest in bodily form to now enter my kingdom of Israel and to begin working with the nations, and we're going to work out every issue from hunger to infrastructure to all manners of humanities. And that is a huge undertaking, where a lot of the mindset right now in the earth is focused on carnal presidents or even prime ministers, or the war this, the immigration crisis, the jihad crisis. All these crises are important to the kingdom. They're important to me because they're important to you. But whenever I'm thinking about solving these issues, I do not ever think of small solves. I think of solves that are going to be everlasting. They're going to be permanent. They're going to be a fixture, like the sun is a fixture into your sky. And a part of these, I understand that I get a lot of kickback because of religious groups. And as Elohim, I do not particularly like to side with any religious group because as attempting as all of you are at trying to nail it down, the the thing that gets people hung up is the schematic of me spans the entire existence. So you're unable to actually capture but what makes sense to humanity versus what makes sense to me. So when I am, let's say, I'm going to build a fence, okay? And I have a new crew of people that have showed up, and in their human mindsets, they're like, well, where's the fence? What are we supposed to do? And in their mind, they could be thinking it's a chain link fence. Maybe it's a three wired fence like you would see at cattle. Maybe it's the square hold fence like you would see at ranches. Maybe it's a PVC fence. Well, because the material hasn't been laid down on the floor for them to see yet, they're not able to understand it. So mankind has a nasty habit of trying to fill in something that they don't know yet. And I, as Elohim, try to say, can you be patient? Wait for me to lay the material before you begin making assumptions about what it is I'm going to build. That's one. So congregations, Christians, Judaism. It's the two primary congregations that are mine. Stop trying to assume things. And please, listen to my voice. Follow after me. Because there's no president that's going to do what I'm doing. There's no prime minister doing what I'm doing. There is no mankind or leader in any shape or form that is going to do what I'm going to do. When I say I mean Almighty Yahweh Elohim, who is in me permanently. This is his house first. And as it is his house first, it is my sovereign duty and right to restore the creation to the liking of the El Elyon. So I want to clear something up again. One, there is in no way that I am a throne usurper of my father. I do not like using the term my father simply because then that breaks into a Trinity type of understanding, which is faulty. There is one Elohim. There is only one name that is to be honored, praised, worshipped, and worthy. That is the name of Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah. That's first and foremost. I want to establish that because my name, Joshua, means that Yahweh is deliverance. Yahweh is salvation. But it is not through the fleshly vehicle that these things will be done. It is through the supernatural hand of the 90%, as I have said. So I consider myself 10% because I am encapsulated in human form, but I am 100% divine. So, because I am on earth does not mean that heaven has been abandoned. That just means that heaven does not have the body of God in it at the moment. That's fact, because I am here. And by being here, I have unique qualities about me. I have the ability to eject my spirit, whereas most humans have either a soul, which you cannot eject from your flesh, which is where you do need it to be actually saved, because you need a body created in heaven for you to be able to be moved to. One. Two is whenever I eject myself and I return home, I'm the same. I'm the same person. But I am here. So there is in no way that I am usurping my own throne, if that makes sense. Because this is where I have to, in a way, walk on eggshells with my Jews and my Christians. Because if I say one thing this way, then Christians will scream Trinity. But if I go to the right and say this way, then Jews scream usurper. And this is more than an annoyance to me, because I am genuinely, to my fullest ability and extent of my heart, I am trying to obey the Spirit which is Yahweh Elohim, the Spirit who is in me, that has erased the identity of who I was before, and now I see through his eyes, I think through his mind, I speak through his mouth, and I rule as him because that is his wishes. I do not argue that. I do not go upstairs and seek out glory for the name of Joshua. I do not go around the world wanting my name Joshua to be postured all around the world. As Yahweh, the living Elohim, I am obeying the command in which he gave me, and to that point, he removed whatever was me and replaced it with himself. And this is to that point where if I were to discuss it like there are two full minds, I would see that if there were two full minds, then that would be like a prophet. Because as Elohim, I'm able to go back in time and I'm able to see how my own spirit descended upon Yeshua for a time for him to gather Gentiles and to go out into the land of Israel and to evangelize and to show proofs to people, to gather them up to be believers into the one true God. And then when Yeshua came to a demise, right, his spirit was ejected from his body, he was raised up into the heavens, and thus was given a crown and given his own realm to rule and reign over for eternity. Yeshua's made it to the finish line. I, as the living Elohim, am specifically here to do very certain things, and for a prolonged period of time. So, this is, to the flesh, the most amazing thing ever. It is beyond comprehensible. It is the most and highest proof anyone could ever have that not only are all things created, but being Yahweh Elohim in the flesh, I'm able to see how that happened. I'm able to actually do those things. But I, as the physical representation of Yahweh Elohim, am still fully obedient to the higher spirit that remains in the heavens. But the higher spirit that remains in the heaven is the fabric of existence itself. So I call myself the 10%, or little Yahweh, or the angel of the Lord, because I am not man. I have divine properties to my flesh. I have divine properties when it comes to the elements of fire, of water, of wind, and earth. I do not have the desire or the want to enter into any human being for a nefarious purpose, although I do have the right to possess somebody, but in a good way. Unlike a demon that would possess somebody to carry out an act of evil or something nefarious, I, as the Spirit made flesh, my goal is to have people receive the Spirit and thus receive the truth. But when one goes down that road and they have done that, it's very crucial for you to finish out your discipleship by making it, to me, here in the carnal. Because when we're sitting down for feast, I'm not making a plate for spirit and truth, right? I'm making plates and I'm sitting seats for physical people that are going to join the feast table in Israel. So I genuinely want my people to be gathered, and I want them to know that that no matter what that everything is going to come to pass the way it has been written. And that's tricky too, because it has been written down by man, so it has been distorted quite a bit. It has been, it has been kind of defiled and extended beyond its purpose, which is something I again will be clarifying in the age to come. So being so strictly obedient unto Big Yahweh means that there are things I say and I do that could very well be appalling to mankind. I understand that. And a part of my understanding in the process is that some people kind of need the shock value at times, at specific times, which is also why I have privatized more than 100, almost 200 videos actually. I privatized more than 200 videos because they served a purpose for a time. But as we continue to march down this road, I do not want people to not know where to start, nor do I want them to feel in any way that I am usurping the throne of Yahweh, or that I am in any way like the devil or Satan or Baal or a fallen angel or Lucifer. I'm none of those things. In fact, I will tell you a little story, and this was back in 2019. I had always had this instinctive feeling that I was more than man, but not in a haughty way, not in a way that I walk around and boast. Quite the opposite. I feel that I am more self-deprecating than even mankind, because I know the true glory of who I am in spirit, and I know that the physical representation at the moment could never ever meet the standard of majesty and glory that my name comes with. So that's one of my first mental battles. But at points in my life, through high points and low points, I always try to keep my divinity in check and never use it in negative ways, even when I could. So for your mental exercise right now, if you could imagine being a very powerful being, able to change the outcomes in your favor at just a thought, but knowing that if I did that it would be unrighteous, because it would be unfair. It would be unfair for me as Elohim to get into man's business and corporations and all these things where I could influence the stock market a certain way to make me a millionaire overnight. I could influence a person or a place or a thing to work to my advantage. And that would only reap me carnal glory and financial success, and that is not my purpose. So if it's not my purpose, that means that I avoid it like the plague, even at points that it may even cost me in this situation through, those exact means. So in 2019, I came down with COVID, like really, really bad. I was one of the first to have COVID. In fact, I've actually wrestled with this because I think that I may have one of my first manifestations as coming full circle. That I think I actually exploded COVID just through like thoughts. Like I literally was talking to it with my wife and was explaining to her this could be a complete epidemic. This could be a worldwide pandemic, and it ended up being like everything as I was saying it. Well, after that, I ended up going on what felt like 100 years in the realms. And the first one, it was an old farmhouse that was out in the middle of a field. And I remember being in the realms. My first thing was I was falling down this slope which had white, red, purple flowers. And I'm sliding down it. And I can see up into the blue sky. And all I could see was the bottom of a robe. And as I went down and down and down, they didn't hurt or anything. It was very amusing. And I remember getting up at the bottom, trying to figure out, what was that I just saw? What was this robe thing? What was this thing? And so I get up and kind of brush myself off, and I'm walking out into the open now, and I see this farmhouse with a door kind of thing right here on the side. So I'm walking up to it, and I see a figure in there. And when I push the door all the way open, this figure was sitting in a wooden chair. If you imagine the door was this way, he was facing this way, and then there were stairs right where he was facing. And he was sitting facing the stairs, and then to his right, there was a small wooden, like, roll-top desk. And the man was white. He had white hair, and for lack of better terms, you know, a lot of the AI images that I create, and I don't understand this either, but a lot of the AI images I create actually look like the man that I met. And I get to the door, and he handed me a book, and then kind of pointed upstairs. And I didn't really have a conversation with him, but when he handed me the book, he pointed upstairs, and I just did it. And so I thank you for the book, and I walk upstairs, and as soon as I get to the top of the stairs, there was a room to my left, and there was a dead body in the room. I can't tell for sure whose dead body it was. I don't know if it was my dead body or some other dead body, but it was in the room, and there was blood everywhere. Blood everywhere. And I remember it really struck me as odd. And then I turn away from the room, and then I start walking down, and now I'm in the top of this old farmhouse thing, like old 1700s, 1800s type of old. And so I'm walking through kind of like the attic area. It had a wood floor, and it had a bunch of junk in it, like a random table full of knickknacks, and then books, and then writings, and just kind of what you would imagine if you found an old property somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, and it had a bunch of old school Amish stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's Amish, but I'm just saying it was that kind of theme. And so I'm walking through, almost like a flea market, but there's nobody else there. And I get to the end, and then I turn around. Excuse me. I turn around, and then I go to walk back down. Now I can see the top of the stairs, and now that room that had the dead body in it is to my right. I look in, and the blood and everything is still there, but the body was gone. And I walked in the room, and I look around, and I'm wondering where this dead body went. But it's gone. And so now I'm really curious. And so I start walking down, and I see the old man again, the Ancient of Days. And so I didn't know that, but I walked down and I said, "Who are you?" And he looks at me and says, "I'm you, and you are me." And then I immediately begin to recognize that the facial features, the eyes, the mouth, it was me but older. And I started feeling really weird, not scared of the man, but almost scared of what that meant. almost scared of what that meant. And I still have my little book with me, and I exit, and then I remember like these 20-something-year-olds, they were riding these wooden wagon things down this like dirt road through a wheat field. And then they were unloading now in the distance like old farm tools, like the old school sickles. And I didn't talk to them, but they all were friendly and waved to a distance as I was walking through the grass, and they were off to the distance, maybe 50 yards. And as I'm walking, and they're giving me a slight nod and a wave, and, you know, everyone's just making a subtle acknowledgement, right? And so I'm walking, and I can't get the image of the man that I just saw out of my mind. And not understanding what that meant. I didn't know what the body meant. I didn't know what encountering this old man was about. And and that began in human years, 100 years almost, of actually going through the time. But then when I would wake up in the carnal, I had been asleep, still sick with COVID, for 16 hours, 20 hours, and this went on for, 6 months to a year. I probably stayed bedridden for most of that time. And every time, and at that point, I was overweight. I was 240 pounds. I was super unhealthy. I was working so much. You know, keeping up with the Joneses. Ashley was working. We were living in a really nice, you know, ritzy, rich area. And anyway, as I'm laying in bed feeling like I'm dying, and when I go to sleep, I'm having these realms visits, and I'm losing weight during the whole time. So I lost all my weight. I was basically getting healthy again, and doing it through being bedridden sick. And anyway, I would go on these places, and I didn't have any control of what it was or anything. And I could probably go on for hours about it, but I don't want to. But there was several instances where I saw it was like a human zoo, I guess. I saw that, which was really interesting. And I'm gonna take 5. Collect my thoughts here.